The vacuum hummed its familiar song at 2:15 in the morning as Maya Thompson pushed it across the marble floors of Charleston's most exclusive high-rise. The penthouse level, 42 floors above the city where normal people slept in normal beds in normal apartments they could actually afford. Maya wasn't normal. She was invisible, and she preferred it that way. 31 years old, night shift cleaning crew, 4 years of pushing carts through buildings where the chandeliers cost more than her annual salary. She'd learned to move like a ghost, to clean without disturbing, to exist in spaces that didn't belong to her without leaving any trace that she'd been there at all. The Harbor View Towers had 42 floors of luxury, but only one penthouse. Unit 42A. The corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Charleston Harbor, where the city lights sparkled like scattered diamonds against black velvet water. She'd been cleaning it for 7 months now, and she'd never once seen the man who lived there. Until tonight. Family, welcome back to Soul Written Stories, where we bring you emotional stories of love. Because in truth, love and death cannot be escaped. No one can say when, how, or where. It's never too early or too late. If you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification button right now so you don't miss what happens next. And if you're one of our returning viewers, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Now, stay with us to the end of this story. Leave a comment with your thoughts and like this video. Let's continue. Maya pushed her cart toward the service elevator, her reflection a blur in the polished brass doors. She looked tired. She was tired. The day shift at the diner ran from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Then she'd sleep for 4 hours, maybe 5 if she was lucky, before starting the night cleaning shift at 11. 7 days a week. No vacations. No sick days. Not when her mother's assisted living facility cost $8,000 a month, and her sister's kids needed school supplies, and someone had to pay the electricity bill at the house that still had her father's name on the mortgage, even though he'd been gone for 3 years. The service elevator opened with a soft chime. Maya stepped inside, pulling her cart behind her. The ride to 42 took exactly 93 seconds. She'd counted once, on a night when counting was the only thing keeping her awake. The penthouse door was always unlocked when she arrived. Building protocol. The wealthy residents didn't want to be bothered with letting cleaning staff in and out. They just wanted their spaces pristine without having to acknowledge the people who made them that way. Maya entered silently, her soft-soled shoes making no sound on the marble foyer. The penthouse was massive. 4,000 square feet of modern luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the main living area like a glass embrace. The furniture was all clean lines and neutral colors, expensive but sterile, beautiful but cold. She'd noticed that on her first night here, how empty it felt, how the air itself seemed to hold its breath, like the space was waiting for something that never came. Tonight, though, something was different. A light was on in the study, soft, amber glow spilling through a half-open door. Maya froze. In 7 months, there had never been a light on, never a sign that anyone was actually home when she cleaned. Her instructions were clear: clean between 2 and 5 in the morning, Tuesdays and Fridays. The resident was always supposed to be out or asleep. She should leave. Come back another time. Report the anomaly to her supervisor and let someone else handle it. Instead, she found herself moving forward, drawn by something she couldn't name. Curiosity, maybe, or loneliness recognizing itself in another form. The study door was cracked open just enough for her to see inside. A man sat in a leather chair by the window, his profile sharp against the city lights beyond. He was holding something. A photograph, she realized. staring at it like it held all the answers to questions he couldn't stop asking. He looked to be in his late 30s. Dark hair with threads of silver at the temples, the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers or in boardrooms. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, the bone structure of someone born into privilege. But his eyes, even from this distance, even in the dim light, she could see the devastation in them. This was a man who had lost something he couldn't get back. Maya knew that look. She'd worn it herself after her father's funeral, after the accident that had taken her husband 2 years into their marriage, after the doctors had told her she might never have children because of the damage the crash had done to her body. Loss had a face, and she recognized it now like an old friend. She should leave. This wasn't her business. She was here to clean bathrooms and polish countertops, not to witness private grief. But her cartwheel squeaked. The man's head snapped up. Their eyes met through the crack in the door, and Maya felt something shift in the air between them. Recognition, not of each other, but of something deeper. Two people who understood what it meant to be hollow. "I'm sorry," Maya said quickly, stepping back. "I didn't know anyone was home. I'll come back another time." She turned to leave, already calculating how she'd explain this to her supervisor, how she'd rearrange her schedule to accommodate a missed cleaning. "Wait." His voice was low, rough from disuse, like he hadn't spoken in hours, maybe days. Maya stopped but didn't turn around. The smart thing was to keep walking. The professional thing. She turned around anyway. The man had risen from his chair, the photograph still clutched in his hand. Up close, he was even more striking. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in clothes that probably cost more than her car. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the way he looked at her, like she was the first real thing he'd seen in a very long time. "You're the one who cleans on Tuesdays and Fridays," he said. It wasn't a question. Maya nodded, unsure what to say. She'd never actually spoken to a resident before. That wasn't how this worked. "The flowers," he continued. "The ones you put in the kitchen vase. Where do you get them?" Of all the things she'd expected him to say, that wasn't it. She hesitated. "I pick them from the garden downstairs." "The maintenance staff doesn't mind," I thought. She looked down at her hands. "I thought the penthouse could use some color. Everything up here is so." She caught herself. "I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize." He moved closer, and she caught his scent. Something expensive, probably. Sandalwood and cedar. But underneath that, she smelled exhaustion. Coffee, the particular staleness of someone who hadn't left their home in too long. "The flowers are the only thing I look forward to anymore." Maya didn't know what to say to that. The admission was too raw, too honest for a conversation between strangers. "I'm Maya," she said finally, because someone needed to say something. "Gabriel," he replied. "Gabriel Hayes." The name clicked into place. Gabriel Hayes, the tech entrepreneur whose face had been plastered across every business magazine for the past 5 years. The man who'd founded a software company at 23 and sold it for $800 million before he turned 30. She'd read about him in passing, the way you read about celebrities and billionaires. People who existed in a different universe entirely. But those articles had been years old. She realized now that she hadn't seen his name in headlines recently, hadn't heard anything about him at all. "You work 2 jobs," Gabriel said. It wasn't a question either. "I've seen you leaving the building at 5 in the morning, and I've seen you at the diner on 4th Street. You work the early shift there." Maya felt exposed in a way she hadn't expected. "You've been watching me?" "I don't sleep," he said simply. Haven't in months. So I watch the city instead. Watch people living their lives. He moved to the window, his back to her. You're the only person who's looked up. Looked up at this building. Everyone else walks past like it doesn't exist. But you. He turned to face her. You stop sometimes. On the sidewalk across the street, you look up at these windows like you're wondering what it would be like to live here. Maya felt her cheeks heat. I wasn't. I just think about the views sometimes. When I'm cleaning up here, they must be beautiful in the morning. They're empty, Gabriel said, just like everything else up here. He looked at the photograph in his hand, then set it face down on his desk. My wife died 14 months ago. Car accident on the bridge. She was coming home from her mother's house. It was raining. The other driver was drunk. The words fell like stones into still water. I'm so sorry, Maya whispered. It was inadequate. She knew that. But what else was there to say? People keep telling me that. Gabriel's voice was hollow. I'm sorry for your loss. She's in a better place. Time heals all wounds. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. None of them know what they're talking about. Time doesn't heal anything. It just stretches, makes the silence louder. Maya thought about her father, about the way his absence had felt like a physical thing, a weight she carried everywhere, about her husband, whose name she still couldn't say without her throat closing up. It doesn't get quieter, she heard herself say. The silence. But you learn to live with the noise, learn to fill it with other things, work, routine, the small details you can control when everything else feels impossible. Gabriel looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. You've lost someone too. It wasn't a question. My father, Maya said, 3 years ago, and my husband before that. He was 28. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat back down in his chair, not dismissing her, but inviting her to stay. Just by the way he positioned himself. Open. Waiting. What did you do? He asked. After. How did you? He struggled with the words. How did you keep going? Maya should have left. Should have gone back to her cart and her vacuum and her carefully constructed invisibility. But something in his voice, the raw desperation beneath the composed surface, made her stay. I cleaned, she said simply. This building, others before it. There's something about cleaning, making order out of chaos, creating spaces that are neat and organized and peaceful. Even when everything inside you is falling apart, you can make the outside look put together. She paused, and for a little while, that's enough. Gabriel nodded slowly, like he understood something he hadn't before. Sit down, he said. Please. I know you have work to do, but... He looked at the empty room around him. I haven't had a conversation in 11 days. Not a real one. Just meetings and lawyers and people who want something from me. He met her eyes. You're the first person who's looked at me like I'm human in longer than I can remember. Maya hesitated. Every rule she'd set for herself said to walk away. Keep her head down. Don't get involved. She'd built her life around invisibility because invisibility was safe. You couldn't lose what you never let yourself have. But she sat down anyway. The chair across from Gabriel was soft leather, probably worth more than a month of her rent. She perched on the edge of it, still in her cleaning uniform, still technically on the clock. Tell me about her, Maya said. Your wife. Gabriel's eyes went glassy. Claire. Her name was Claire. She laughed at her own jokes, even when they weren't funny, especially when they weren't funny. He smiled, but it was sad. She couldn't cook to save her life, so I did all the cooking. She hated that I worked so much, but she understood why. She wanted kids. We were trying. He stopped, swallowed hard. We just found out she was pregnant. 6 weeks. She was going to tell her mother. That's why she was on the bridge. Maya felt her chest constrict. 2 lives lost, not just one. "I'm sorry," she said again. And this time it didn't feel inadequate. This time it felt like all there was to say. They sat in silence for a while, not uncomfortable. Just present. 2 people who understood that sometimes silence was better than empty words. "You should finish your cleaning," Gabriel said eventually. "I've kept you too long." Maya stood, but she didn't move toward the door. "Can I ask you something?" Gabriel nodded. "Why don't you sleep?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because when I sleep, I dream about her. And when I wake up, I have to remember she's gone all over again. At least when I'm awake, the pain is constant. I don't have to lose her twice." Maya understood that too, more than she could say. She left then, but she didn't go far. She cleaned the penthouse the way she always did, quietly and thoroughly, making order out of chaos. But she left the study door cracked open, and every now and then she'd glance inside and see Gabriel still sitting by the window, watching the city lights, no longer entirely alone. When she finished at 5 in the morning, she found a note on the kitchen counter. His handwriting was neat, precise. "The flowers help. Thank you." Maya tucked the note into her pocket and went home to sleep for 4 hours before her shift at the diner. The following Tuesday, she returned to the penthouse at 2:15 in the morning. The light was on in the study again. This time, she didn't hesitate. Gabriel was in the same chair, but he looked different. Still tired, still carrying grief like a second skin. But something in his eyes had shifted. A small spark where there had been only emptiness before. "You came back," he said. "I work Tuesdays and Fridays," Maya reminded him. He almost smiled. "That's not what I meant." She sat down in the chair across from him, the one that was starting to feel familiar. They talked until 4 in the morning, about everything and nothing. About her father, who had worked construction his whole life and died of a heart attack on a job site. About her husband Marcus, who had been an EMT and had been killed by a drunk driver on his way home from a 12-hour shift. About her mother, whose Alzheimer's was slowly erasing every memory they'd shared. About the system that kept people like Maya running in place, working 2 jobs just to keep from drowning. Gabriel listened, really listened. Not the way rich people usually listen to working people, with half their attention and all of their assumptions. He listened like her words mattered, like she mattered. And in return, he told her about Claire, about their first date, which had been a disaster, about their wedding, which had been small and perfect, about the way she used to hum in the shower and steal his sweaters and leave her coffee cups all over the house, about the morning she'd told him about the pregnancy, her face glowing with joy that he'd never see again. By the time Maya left to finish her cleaning, something had changed between them. They weren't just strangers anymore. They were something else, something neither of them had a name for yet. The weeks passed. Tuesday and Friday became the fixed points in Maya's calendar, the nights she looked forward to even as exhaustion pulled at her bones. Gabriel was always awake when she arrived. Sometimes he was reading. Sometimes he was working, his laptop casting blue light across his face. Sometimes he was just sitting, staring at the photograph he kept face down on his desk. But he always looked up when she came in. always had coffee ready, always made space for her in his chair. They talked about everything, about politics and philosophy and the best pizza in Charleston, about his company, which he hadn't visited in months because he couldn't face the pity in everyone's eyes. About her dreams, which had gotten smaller over the years, until they barely existed at all. "You wanted to be a teacher," Gabriel said one night, remembering something she'd mentioned weeks ago. "When I was young," Maya admitted. "Elementary school. I loved kids, still do. But then my dad got sick, and then Marcus died, and then my mom." She shrugged. Life gets in the way. What if it didn't have to? Maya looked at him, uncertain what he meant. "What if you could go back to school?" Gabriel asked. "Get your teaching degree. What would that take?" "It's not that simple." "What if it was?" She felt something flicker in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. "Why do you care?" she asked, not unkindly. "About my dreams? About any of this?" "I'm your cleaning lady, Gabriel. I push a vacuum and scrub your toilets. Why does it matter to you what I wanted to be?" Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because you're the only person who's been honest with me since Claire died. Everyone else wants something. Money, connections, a piece of what I've built. But you..." He shook his head. "You've never asked me for anything. You just see me. The real me. The broken one. And you don't look away." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. She wasn't someone who cried easily. Life had beaten that out of her years ago. "You're not broken," she said softly. "You're grieving. There's a difference. Is there?" "Yes." She leaned forward. "Broken means beyond repair. Grieving means you loved someone enough that their absence leaves a hole. That's not weakness, Gabriel. That's humanity." He looked at her like she'd given him something precious. Like she'd given him permission to feel what he'd been fighting against for 14 months. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "How to be in the world again, how to want things, how to..." He stopped, struggling. How to what? How to feel anything that isn't pain. Maya reached out and took his hand. It was the first time they'd touched. His skin was warm, his fingers long and elegant. The hands of someone who'd never had to scrub floors or carry heavy trays. But they were trembling. "You start small," she said. "One thing that doesn't hurt, then another, then another. Until one day you realize you've built something new around the hole, not to fill it. You can't fill it. But to hold it, to make space for the pain and the joy to exist together." "Have you done that?" he asked. "Built something new?" "I'm trying," Maya said honestly. "Every day. Some days are better than others." They sat in silence, her hand still in his, until the sky began to lighten outside the windows. Maya left that morning with something new growing in her chest. Something she wasn't ready to name. Something that scared her as much as it warmed her. 3 weeks later, Gabriel asked her to have dinner with him. "Not during my cleaning shift?" Maya asked, surprised. "A real dinner," he said, "in a restaurant, with other people around, like normal humans do." She laughed despite herself. "Are we normal humans?" "I'm trying to be," he said. "You're helping me try." Maya should have said no. The gap between them was too wide. He was a billionaire. She was a cleaning lady. People like them didn't have dinners together, didn't become whatever they were becoming. But she'd stopped being able to say no to Gabriel somewhere around the 3rd week. Somewhere around the first time he'd made her laugh. Somewhere around the night he'd told her about the baby Claire had never gotten to have, and she'd held him while he wept for the first time since the funeral. "Okay," she said. "But somewhere quiet. I don't like crowds." He took her to a restaurant she'd never heard of. A small Italian place in the historic district, family-owned, with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. The kind of place that felt like a secret. Gabriel had reserved the whole restaurant. "Is this your idea of quiet?" Maya asked, looking around at the empty tables. "I didn't want to share you," Gabriel admitted. "I know that's selfish. But I've spent so long sharing everything, being public property, having every meal documented and analyzed. I wanted one night that was just ours." They ate pasta and drank wine and talked until the owner started making pointed comments about closing time. Maya learned that Gabriel had grown up poor, not wealthy as she'd assumed. That he'd built his fortune from nothing, working 3 jobs to put himself through college. That his parents had died young, his father from diabetes he couldn't afford to treat, his mother from the grief that followed. "You're like me," Maya realized. "You just escaped." "No one escapes," Gabriel said. "We just carry it differently. I have money and an empty penthouse. You have work ethic and an empty apartment. We're both still running from the same things." "What things?" "The fear that nothing we build will last, that everyone we love will leave, that we'll end up alone no matter how hard we try." Maya put down her fork. "Is that what you believe?" "It's what I've always believed," Gabriel said. "Until recently." "What changed?" "You," he said simply. "You changed it." Maya's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Gabriel," she started, but he held up a hand. "I know," he said. "I know this doesn't make sense. I know I'm still grieving. I know you're exhausted and working yourself to death, and you don't need some broken billionaire complicating your life." He leaned forward. "But you make me want to try. For the first time since Claire died, you make me want to see what tomorrow looks like. And I hope, maybe I do the same for you." Maya couldn't speak. The words were trapped in her chest, tangled up with fear and hope and the terrifying possibility that she might get to have something good again. "I'm scared," she finally admitted. "I don't know how to do this, how to let someone in after everything I've lost." "I know," Gabriel said. "Me too. But maybe we can figure it out together. Maybe being scared is okay as long as we're scared together." Maya looked at him. This man she'd met by accident, this billionaire who couldn't sleep, this grieving soul who had somehow found her in the darkness. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Let's try." 6 months later, Maya enrolled in the education program at the College of Charleston. Gabriel paid for everything, not as charity, but as what he called an investment in the future. She'd argued with him for 3 days before accepting, and even then only on the condition that she'd pay him back. "You'll never let me just give you anything, will you?" Gabriel had asked, half exasperated, half admiring. "No," Maya had said firmly. "That's not how this works." He'd smiled then, a real smile, the kind she'd learned to recognize as rare and precious. "I know. It's one of the things I love about you. Love." He said the word casually now, like it belonged between them. Because it did. Maya had moved into the penthouse 3 months after their first dinner. Not because Gabriel had asked, but because she'd been spending every night there anyway, and it seemed foolish to keep paying rent on an apartment she never used. She still cleaned, not the whole building anymore, but she kept the penthouse spotless. Gabriel had tried to hire someone else, had argued that she shouldn't be cleaning when she was studying and building a new life. But Maya needed it, needed the order, needed the control. It was her meditation, her prayer, her way of making sense of the world. Besides, she told him, If I stop cleaning, I'll forget where I came from. Would that be so bad? Gabriel had asked. Yes, Maya had said firmly. I worked 2 jobs for 10 years. I cleaned toilets and waited tables and survived. I'm not ashamed of any of it, and I don't want to become someone who is. Gabriel had pulled her close then, buried his face in her hair. I love you, he'd said, exactly as you are. I never want you to be anyone else. A year after they met, Maya graduated from college with a teaching degree. Gabriel was in the front row, crying harder than she was. Her mother was there too, having a good day, lucid enough to understand what was happening. Her sister brought the kids, who ran around the auditorium until other parents started glaring. It was chaos. It was imperfect. It was perfect. Gabriel proposed that night. On the roof of their building, under the stars he'd spent so many sleepless nights watching. I know this is fast, he said, kneeling on the concrete, a ring box in his trembling hand. I know we've only had a year. I know people will talk. I know. Maya kissed him before he could finish. Yes, she said against his lips. Yes, stop talking, and yes. They got married 6 months later. Small ceremony. Immediate family only. Maya wore a dress she'd found at a consignment shop, altered by her mother's shaking hands in a rare moment of clarity. Gabriel wore a suit that cost more than her old apartment and cried through his entire vow speech. You found me, he said, his voice breaking. When I was lost in the dark, you found me. You didn't try to fix me, or change me, or save me. You just sat with me, in the silence, in the grief. You made space for all of it, for me. And you showed me that love isn't about forgetting what we've lost. It's about building something new that can hold it all. Maya cried too. She thought she was done with tears, thought life had wrung them all out of her. But these were different. These were joy. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter. Maya, at 35, after everything she'd been told, after every door that had seemed closed, held a baby in her arms. They named her Claire. And at night, when Maya couldn't sleep, when the weight of everything she'd gained made her afraid she'd lose it all, Gabriel would find her by the window. The same window where she'd first seen him, holding a photograph of the woman he'd lost. He'd wrap his arms around her, and they'd watch the city lights together. You okay? He'd always ask. And Maya would lean into him, into this life they'd built from nothing but honesty and hope, and 2 broken people brave enough to try. I'm perfect, she'd say, and for the first time in her life, she'd mean it. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out.